My father remarried when I, 25 female, was 14, his wife Mary, 49, and his stepdaughter Kyla, 26, were a nightmare in my life. My father's wealthy, so we used to go to fancy schools. Kyla was very mean to me, and I had a hard time, to the point that I had to move to another school because I couldn't take it anymore. Once she convinced my father and Mary that I was pregnant, it was so embarrassing because I was still a virgin, and yet she and Mary convinced my father that I should do a pregnancy test. After it came back negative, she told some of her friends at school that she was 1 year ahead of me and that I had a procedure. The bullying was nonstop. She would do anything to make my life miserable. Once she paid some guy at school to start a rumor that I slept with him. When I was already going to another school, she told everybody at my old school that I left because I was caught stealing at the mall and I was in a youth detention center. My parents had split custody, so I used to spend 1 week with my father and 1 with my mom. After 2 years of a nightmare, I told my father that I wouldn't stay at his place anymore, and our relationship was reduced to 2 weekends a month. My relationship with my father was non-existent during my college days. He would send me money and call me once every month, and that was it. I went to his house once or twice during my 5 years in college. I started dating my fiancé, Louis, 26 male, 4 years ago, and I only introduced him to my father after more than 2 years of relationship. I'm getting married this spring, and we'll get married at the beach in another European country. Both families are wealthy, and we decided to offer a stay at the hotel to our guest, and they'll only pay for their tickets. Because of that, we chose to settle on a small number of guests, around 80, and of course, Kyla is not one of them. The wedding plan started 3 months ago, and my father knew that I wouldn't invite Kyla. However, he flipped out now and said I needed to invite her. I told him that I would not invite a person that I didn't have a good memory of to such a big day. We've been fighting about that since then. This last week, he told me that I shouldn't count on his money if Kyla isn't invited, and my mom said, "Fine, I'll pay for everything then." After that, he said that he wasn't coming to the wedding without Kyla, and I replied, "Fine." My grandma and aunt are trying to convince me to invite Kyla for our family's good, but honestly, I'm not even sure if we are a family. Am I the idiot for not inviting a person who bullied me for years to one of the biggest days of my life? My father said he's not paying or coming to the wedding without her. Edit. My father was up on everything, and he never took it seriously. My grandma lives in another country, and I don't know how much she knew at the time, but she knows to some extent now. My aunt knows everything because her daughter is one of my best friends and my bridesmaid. My grandma's point is, what will people think about a wedding without your father? And my aunt says that I might regret that in the future. Life's too short. My father loves me, and I'll understand and miss him. You are not the idiot. I'm sorry your dad has spent 11 years putting your stepsister ahead of you. My grandma and aunt are trying to convince me to invite Kyla for the good sake of our family. Where was all that concern when you were being tormented to the point where it shattered the family? Did they ever suggest to Kyla, her mother, or your father that she stop her atrocious behavior? I'd be ready to break ties with all of them if they don't stop trying to tell you to fix the family that was broken by Kyla, her mom, and your dad. What will people think? If anyone asks why he's absent, say he was invited and chose not to come. Trust me, this makes him look bad and puts the ownership on him to explain. Your grandmother's more concerned about appearances than your feelings. Don't back down. You will regret it forever if you do, because this will taint the memories of your wedding. Honestly, I would threaten to disinvite the grandma too if she keeps pushing it. But my father loves me. No, he doesn't. It's a brutal truth, but a failure to demonstrate caring action is a failure to love. I'm sorry to tell you this. Your father doesn't love you. If he did, his stepdaughter would have been out of his house to keep a relationship with you. If his wife had to go too, she would have been thrown out too. Darling, wake up. He straight up pulled out of your wedding and tried to hold money over you for the person who bullied you, clearly showing outright preference and favoritism. You need to re-examine your relationship with him because he's an idiot. You're in denial, and I'm sorry about that. I, 31 female, am a manager for a big tech company. My husband is an internal medicine specialist. I make over $200K a year, and he recently started making his full salary, around $400K. We had our first child around 2 years ago, and I'm pregnant with our second. My family's pretty open-minded about it, but my husband's family is old-fashioned, and since we're Japanese, there's a consensus from them that women who are married with children shouldn't be working. My husband is fortunate. He has fewer loans than other doctors, just over $130K, but that's because his family paid a lot of it off already. So I've been getting hints from them that I should be a stay-at-home mom and leave the money-making up to my husband. I don't want to leave my job, and my company's relatively understanding. I got 6 months off, 3 months with full pay, and 3 months without for my first child, and could keep my current position. The male members of my team are also able to take paternity leave, so I don't see why I have to leave my job. I also paid most of the bills while my husband wasn't making much as a resident. My aunt was a stay-at-home mom, and to supplement her income in retirement, she babysat my son. She'll also look after my youngest child when my maternity leave ends. I've also been guilted by other moms, especially my husband's coworkers' wives, since most of them who are not doctors become stay-at-home moms. But I don't see why I need to. My husband and I are outsourcing all of our cleaning, grocery delivery, lawn maintenance, etc. So all we do is cook. So almost all our time at home is spent together as a family. And apart from the rare occasion we both work 9 to 10 hours a day, with me working a bit less as I don't have a commute. Even then, we still save much more than if I were a stay-at-home mom. But my mother-in-law has commented that it's not right to outsource these things because a mother shows her love by cleaning after her kids and husband. My mother-in-law recently came over, and while eating dinner, she said the food was great and complimented me. I said my husband made the food. He finished work early, and I was in a meeting with a customer, and she was shocked and said it wasn't right that my husband had to do any work after his long shift. I got annoyed and said that I was working longer than him today, and she said, well, then you should quit, so you don't need to. I got mad and told her that I saved over $12K a month after paying to outsource work I didn't have an interest in doing anyway. With that money, we can send our children to top schools and have undergrad and probably grad school paid for. So it's ridiculous to expect me to quit just because she has old-fashioned ideas that women need to be on their knees scrubbing away. My mother-in-law was offended, but my husband told her it's already settled and I'm going to still be working. But everyone's always telling me I'm a bad mom if I don't quit my job, and it's worn me down. Am I the idiot for telling my mother-in-law that I make too much to be a stay-at-home mom? Not the idiot for shutting her down. However, it's more effective to cut it off at the root. Husband and I are perfectly capable of making the best choices for us and our kids, thanks, rather than answer her butting in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense. If someone earns $200K and wants to be a stay-at-home mom, more power to them. It's about the right choices for the individuals involved, not specific careers or incomes. I don't need to know what you make or how much you save under various scenarios. All I need to know is that you and your husband agree and your family's thriving. I think you're correct, but it does sound like mother-in-law's been pressing the issue and won't stop attempting to interfere and control another woman. It just sounds like mother-in-law refuses to respect them and take a hint. Girl, go get that money, but consider both sides. In a few years, will you regret not staying home with your older kids? Or will you regret having quit your job and giving in to the pressures around you? Do what you want to do. I always hate when people say that you'll regret not spending time because I feel it's most often directed at moms. She's working very normal hours and hours similar to her husband's. Yet they don't question if the dad spends enough time with the kids or shows affection towards the child by cooking and cleaning. Mother-in-law saying that OP needs to do these things to show affection and love makes me question if she was one of those types of parents and she doesn't know that there are other ways to love your children. My husband works 12-hour shifts. Anything over 10 on a typical 40-hour week is double time. Therefore, he's been working 12-hour shifts 5 days a week to save money. Now for the backstory. We have a tween, a pre-tween, a kindergartner, and an infant. When I was 6 months pregnant, the apartment building we lived in was condemned. Mold and mice issues that we didn't know about due to having 3 cats and the mold not visible. We were put up in a hotel until about a week before my due date, during which time we searched for housing and found nothing. We ended up having to stay with my mom. I had my daughter a week later, and my husband found us a place 2 days later. It's important to note that I begged him just to let us stay at my mom's house when he told me where he got us a place. For one, he works all the time, and he couldn't take time off, so I wouldn't have to help. For two, the school district in the area he was moving us to is partial remote learning, short staffing, so the kids would only be at school twice a week and the rest at home because it rotated between kids. So not only was I going to be caring for a newborn alone, I would have to deal with schooling my other children, one who has a heavy IEP, individualized education program, and strong learning disabilities. And I knew that I wouldn't mentally have the bandwidth to do this. But my husband insisted because he didn't want to live with my mom and because the place he found us was in the house next to his best friend. He used the excuse that if I needed anyone, his buddy's wife was right there and I could have play dates because she has 5 kids. I wasn't interested in any of this, but he still insisted and made me feel like I was being irrational for wanting to give up a housing opportunity to stay at my mother's. But regardless, we have 5 people now living in a 2-bedroom tiny apartment, paying $1,600 a month with nothing included. It's so small that we can't even fit a dining room table for the kids to eat, and they instead eat on the couch, which doubles into my pull-out bed. Since we moved here, his friends and his kids are always here. Since the day we moved in here, those kids have been banging on my door 3 to 4 times a day, looking for my kids and waking up the baby every single time. When my husband gets off of work, his buddy calls him outside at least twice every night, going on store runs, dump runs, or just hanging out for no less than 2 hours. They're constantly loud, and we're right on a river, so I don't even trust my kids going outdoors. I've brought up all of these points several times. I'm always met with a, "Babe, it'll all be fine. I'm saving money. We won't be here forever." That's it. I have 0 time to recover from birth, and I'm so exhausted, mentally and physically, and I'm having serious doubts about my marriage because of the constant resentment. 14 years, and I've never felt like this before. And last night, I ended up snapping because I needed a break. I passed the baby off to my husband, and I went outside to take a breather and be alone. As soon as I walked outside, his friend saw me, walked over to talk to me, and asked me where my husband was because he needed to run to the store and wanted to know if he wanted to go. My husband ended up going, and I got a total of maybe 30 seconds of alone time. So I lost it, and I told him he had 2 choices. Get us the heck out of here because my mental well-being was at stake, or I was going back to my mom's. He said he doesn't understand what I expect him to do because there's nothing available. I told him to figure it the heck out. Now he says I'm putting too much pressure on him because he's stressed too, and apparently it's all he thinks about. But I can't do this anymore. Am I the idiot? Edit. I have a job. I'm not worried about money, and he shouldn't be worried either. So I'm not sure why he's working so much overtime every single week. He brings home enough to cover all the bills in one paycheck while doing overtime in just 1 week. The issue is that we can't find other housing. The reason I want to go to my mom's is because she has 3 extra bedrooms, and she's offered us repeatedly. But my husband doesn't want to be there because he doesn't want to live with anyone and be under anyone's thumb. Despite the fact that he and his mother have been talking about us all buying a house together, so it's just an excuse he's giving me. You are not the idiot, but I'm not sure why you had 4 kids with this loser. Just go to your mom's. Do you need his permission? That moron is putting grocery trips with his buddy over your mental health. It's past time to just go to your mom's. He clearly isn't going to prioritize you. I can't even imagine living with that much stress, or living with a man so oblivious to my well-being. Hey, baby number 5 is surely going to cure all their ills, or something. Yeah, OP, keep pumping out kids. I'm sure that will improve it. Let's not pretend 90% of this crap didn't exist in some form 2 years ago. Sis, your husband can't find another place to live because he doesn't want to. The new place that doesn't even fit his family's needs is perfect for him because his little friend lives next door. You're not being heard here, and it's affecting your health and your children's education. It might be time for a dramatic gesture so he sees how serious this is. Take your kids and go back to your mom's house. You need her support with 4 kids, working, etc., and your partner is not listening. Jesus, OP, you are the idiot because you stay with someone who's terrible and doesn't care about your children's comfort. Why is this even a question? A living situation with your mom that's quiet, safe, comfortable, and spacious versus a living situation that's cramped, loud, uncomfortable, and dangerous. Stop being a doormat. This is an absolute no-brainer. Pack up your kids and head to your mom's house. Your teenager of a husband can come if he wants. Why the heck do you need his permission? Just go. My dad owned 170 acres where he and my mom built my childhood home. 25 years ago, I was divorcing my toxic ex-husband, and Dad gave me 60 acres of land. They moved my young children and me to my childhood home to live with them while they built my future house beside them. 5 years later, I asked my dad to set a price and allow me to pay him back. I did, at a price Dad set below the land and house value, but at a price I could afford as a single mother. I purchased the land legally. I have the deed to the land in my name only. I've lived beside my parents for 24 years now. I have 2 sisters who live hours away. Both of my parents have recently died. Dad's trust states that every asset be divided equally between his 3 daughters. As for the land, we will each receive a third of Dad's 110 acres. Hours after Dad's funeral, my 2 sisters confronted me, stating that his trust was unfair to them. They stated that I already have 60 acres, and if I get a third of Dad's 110 acres, plus or minus 35 acres, I'll have a total of 95 acres, and they'll only each have 35 acres, plus or minus. They believed that if I gave them my third share, I would have my 60 acres, they would each get 55 acres, and it would be fair. Through the years, Dad had 2 opportunities to change his will and trust after I purchased the land and the house, and he didn't. Additionally, my sisters have never discussed their feelings with Dad. 2 days later in text, one of my sisters apologized twice for her behavior. The other sister hasn't apologized, spoken, called, or texted. I've made the decision not to give them my share of the inheritance. I won't even consider it. My decision to keep my share of my inherited land has cost me a relationship with my sisters, yet I've done nothing wrong. I didn't initiate this. I've been told I'm wrong. I'm being treated as if this is my fault. I'm being treated as if I'm the idiot. Why do I feel like I am the idiot? Edit. I told them I owned it and had a deed. They didn't ask to see the deed. Instead, they searched the courthouse 3 days before the funeral. Not the idiot. Your sisters are entitled brats. You bought and paid for your share fair and square. They had their chance to talk to Dad about it, but they didn't. Now they want to guilt trip you into giving up what's rightfully yours. Don't let them bully you. Keep your inheritance and tell them to shove it. Exactly. By the way, OP's decision to keep the land did not cost her a relationship with her sisters. Her sisters' greed and unwillingness to accept the wishes of her deceased parents is what ruined their relationship. Honey, stand your ground, pun intended, and take the third of the 110 acres. Your sisters are greedy and trying to guilt trip you and to giving them land that should be yours. You bought and paid for the land you live on. It's yours, not part of the inheritance. If your dad wanted to divide his land for just your sisters, he would have written a will that reflected that. Good riddance. You will be better off without your sisters.